I have a younger sister, Ella, who is really big on the idea of staying pure until marriage. It's a personal choice she's made, which is great for her, but it's led her to become pretty judgmental towards anyone who doesn't share her views, including me. We weren't brought up in a religious family. Our parents are pretty chill about these things, so this is all coming from her own beliefs. Over the years, her attitude has caused a bit of a rift between us. I've generally tried to keep my personal life private, especially my romantic relationships, to avoid her isms. A couple of years ago, I ended up getting pregnant. The situation wasn't ideal, and instead of support, I received harsh judgment from Ella. She shamed me for my choices, even going so far as to say she hoped the father would leave me to raise the child alone as a lesson for not waiting until marriage like she was. Her reaction hurt deeply, and as a result, I decided to cut her off for the remainder of my pregnancy. However, after my son was born, she reached out, apologized for her behavior, and we slowly started to mend fences. Ella has been with her boyfriend, Sam, since high school. She often brags about how they're waiting until marriage and how their relationship is built on trust and real love, not just physical attraction. I respected their choice, even if she often used it as a way to highlight how different we were. Here's where things took a turn. Not long ago, an old coworker who I confided in during the times Ella and I weren't speaking reached out to me unexpectedly. She had some surprising news. She had come across Sam on Tinder. She sent me screenshots of his profile, which used a fake name but was unmistakably him, and messages where he said his girlfriend knew about his Tinder use for hookups. When my coworker revealed she knew me, he panicked and unmatched her quickly, but not before she could take screenshots and send them to Ella, who responded by blocking my coworker. I kept this information to myself until recently at Ella's birthday party. It was a small family gathering in our parents' basement. No friends, just close family and Sam. Towards the end of the party, after a long day and in a moment of fatigue and frustration, my patience snapped as we were chatting about my son. Ella made a snide remark, insinuating I didn't know who his father was among several possible men. Both she and Sam laughed, thinking it was hilarious. Embarrassed and angry, I retorted that at least I knew who my child's father was, hinting that she might find Sam's activities on Tinder surprising. I thought my comment would embarrass them into silence, but instead, Ella exploded in anger. She screamed, called me names, and demanded I leave her party. I retreated to my room upstairs with my son, hearing the chaos continue below as my young cousins, curious about the drama, confirmed the Tinder profiles and showed them to Ella. The party ended abruptly with Ella in tears and everyone else in shock. My parents, unfortunately, were not supportive. They scolded me for causing a scene at the party and sided with Ella, despite her initial provocation. They suggested I apologize to smooth things over. My dad thinks they're overreacting, but he's staying out of it to avoid more conflict. So here I am, wondering if I handled things all wrong. Should I have kept quiet and just let her comment slide? Or was I right to stand up for myself? It's a mess, and I feel stuck between standing my ground and keeping peace in the family. What would you do in my shoes? Am I the a-hole now? For the top comments, not the idiot, low-key funny. Look, she disrespected you and didn't respect your kid. The child doesn't need to grow up near that, and she can have her own beliefs, but she does not have the right to try and force them on other people and judge them. Distance yourself from her. She's in denial and lashing out. So sister brags that she and her boyfriend are both virgins, but he actually sleeps with other women. It's high-key for me. In my opinion, sister is so fixated on being celibate for whatever reason, like it makes her a rare breed or something. She got her head so high in the clouds that she's still with the guy, so ready to cheat. God, that AQ was something she was not blessed with. I swear, if I'd been there, I'd have been in the corner dying laughing at CIS. She got all the way exposed. LOL. She called you a slur in front of your whole family, including your toddler son. You just made a killer joke that also happened to be partially true. Your parents are wrong. Your sister made fun of a little boy to his face in front of his mother. Why don't they stick up for that grandchild at all? Does your sister always get to walk all over everyone? Everyone's the idiot here. This is a terrible environment for your child. Not a single person is mature enough to leave the other alone. You need to cut or limit contact with your child. Your child doesn't need to hear jokes about you not knowing who his dad is or how many people there were possible. Keep him away from her and cut the comments out yourself and move out from your parents' place. Think of the environment you want your child to be in. Story 2. My husband and I have been happily married for 7 years, and we've been blessed with 4 wonderful children. The youngest 2 were born just last September. Meanwhile, my sister-in-law and her husband, who is my brother-in-law, welcomed their first child at the start of this year. Recently, they came to stay with us for a few days so we could all meet their little one for the first time. The visit was hectic but enjoyable, filled with the kind of busy energy that only babies and family can bring. One evening, while the babies were finally asleep and we had a moment to breathe, my sister-in-law and I started chatting about our experiences as stay-at-home moms. During our conversation, the topic of how we manage finances came up. She was curious about whether I received an allowance from my husband since I don't work outside the home. I explained to her that in our family, we didn't have such a system. I simply had free access to our joint bank accounts to use as needed for household expenses and personal use. We discussed this a bit more and then moved on to other topics. Unbeknownst to me, this conversation sparked something in my sister-in-law. She liked the idea of not having a restricted allowance and having more financial freedom. She started pressing my brother-in-law to rethink their setup, which currently involved a strict allowance system. This discussion between them somehow led my brother-in-law to talk to my husband about the whole allowance concept. After their visit, my husband brought up the idea of us starting an allowance system. He was influenced by my brother-in-law, who seemed convinced that allowances were a more structured way to handle finances. They had calculated their allowance based on what my sister-in-law would have earned if she were still working, minus childcare costs and her share of household expenses. Since I never worked a formal job after finishing my degree, choosing instead to care for our children, I didn't have similar earnings to base an allowance on. This conversation took a turn I wasn't expecting. For the first time, it felt like my husband didn't fully recognize all that I contributed to our home and family. It felt like he was devaluing my role, which was surprising and hurtful. Despite my discomfort with the idea, I reluctantly agreed to consider an allowance but decided to approach it differently. I would calculate my monetary value as a stay-at-home mom based on the going rates for nannies and house cleaners in our area. I spent some time researching and added up the hours I would typically work in a day, way beyond the standard 9 to 5. I included the cost of childcare for our 4 kids, cleaning, cooking, and managing the household. The total came out to about $2,560 per month, but I rounded it up to $115,000 to cover any miscellaneous expenses. To make a point about how much I manage and contribute, I decided to use a portion of this hypothetical allowance. I went out and spent $1,500 on necessary items for the house and some treats for the kids and myself. When I showed my husband the receipts and explained my calculations, he immediately understood the message I was trying to convey. He apologized for not appreciating my contributions fully and reassured me of his gratitude and respect for all that I do. However, when my brother-in-law heard about my approach and the spending, he called me petty and spiteful. Some friends also felt that I went too far by turning a theoretical discussion into a real-life demonstration of my financial worth to the family. Now, I'm left wondering if I might have pushed the envelope too far, just to prove a point. Was it really necessary to spend that money to make my husband see my value? Or should I have handled it differently? On one hand, it resolved the misunderstanding with my husband, but on the other, it stirred up more drama than I anticipated. What do you think? Was I justified in my actions, or did I overstep in trying to make my point? Am I the idiot now? For the top comments, not the idiot. $1,500 was much cheaper than a divorce. Just adding that studies show a stay-at-home mom works 96 hours a week, so that is well over 2 full-time jobs and would cost over $100,000 a year to replace it with paid labor. The idea of an adult having an allowance just leaves a very bad taste. Where did you get the 96 hours that the stay-at-home parent works? Most people work a 40-hour week, even if you make it a 1-hour commute each way for 5 days. An average full-time job only adds up to 50 hours. That the other parent is out of the house and the stay-at-home mom is working. Once both partners are home, everything is back to 50-50ths. If the stay-at-home mom is working 96 hours to their partner's 50 hours, they must have a deadbeat partner. My brother-in-law's calculation method subtracts out childcare from her allowance. If there was anything to include, it would be how much her contribution saves them in childcare. I bet the brother-in-law also expects everything to be taken care of 24/7, so he can come home and do nothing. Brother-in-law should have minded his own business. Instead, he's just angry because now his wife knows he's a big cheapskate who doesn't value her. It sucks to be him. Hopefully, brother-in-law pulls this shot together before allowance becomes alimony. Even the term allowance for your adult partner seems off. An allowance is what you give a kid, so there seems to be a superiority complex with him. OP, brother-in-law is mad you put ideas in his wife's head. Now she wants something better for herself. Also, good on you for helping your husband see the light. Story 3. I've got a somewhat silly, somewhat serious family dilemma on my hands, and I could really use some outsider perspectives to make sure I'm not overthinking this or underthinking it for that matter. Here's what went down. The evening we had my in-laws over for a nice family dinner. Everything was set for a cozy evening. The table was laid, the food was almost ready, and I was just about getting the drinks ready. I had this pitcher, which I filled with ice and water, and after setting a few glasses, I left it on the counter to check on the stove as I was stirring the pot. My mother-in-law, being helpful as always, picked up where I left off and started filling up the rest of the glasses. Just then, my teenage stepdaughter entered the kitchen and saw her grandma using the pitcher. She immediately told her to stop, saying that was the dog's water. My mother-in-law, puzzled, responded that she had just seen me using it, but my stepdaughter doubled down, insisting it was gross and definitely not for human use. Let me give a bit of background about this infamous picture. Yes, I do use it to fill up our dog's water bowl. Why? Because it holds more water than her bowl, and it's super convenient for me to top off her water as I go about my kitchen chores. However, and this is important, the dog never directly drinks from the pitcher. It's just a tool for me to transfer water from the tap to her bowl. I thought I cleared up the confusion by explaining this setup to my mother-in-law, and we went back to our dinner prep. Fast forward to us sitting down to eat and the water glasses needing a refill. My husband reaches for the pitcher, but my mother-in-law stops him, still convinced that it's somehow not fit for our use despite my earlier explanation. She seemed really taken aback, almost offended that I'd use the same pitcher for both purposes. This situation made me pause and think. In my mind, the pitcher is just like any kitchen utensil, a means to an end. It doesn't touch the dog's mouth. It doesn't get contaminated, and the water inside is as clean as the water that comes out of our kitchen faucet. To me, there's absolutely no difference between the water in that pitcher and the water in any other container in our house. However, my mother-in-law's reaction has thrown me for a loop. She appeared genuinely distressed by the idea, as if I had breached some unspoken rule of kitchen etiquette. This has led to a surprisingly uncomfortable atmosphere, with her questioning my judgment, albeit subtly. Now, I'm left wondering if I need to make amends here. Did I inadvertently cross a hygienic boundary that I wasn't aware of? Is it strange that I didn't consider the pitcher off limits for human use after it's been used to pour water for the dog's bowl? My perspective is that since the pitcher isn't contaminated, there's no issue. But the strong reaction from my mother-in-law suggests otherwise. What do you think? Should I apologize to ease her mind and possibly consider getting a separate pitcher for the dog to avoid future misunderstandings? Or is this just a case of overreaction where a simple clarification should suffice? I'd love to hear your thoughts, especially if anyone's had similar quirky family issues over seemingly trivial things. It seems small, but I guess it's these little things that sometimes need the most attention to maintain peace in the family. Now for the top comments. You are the idiot. How dare you make your dog drink the same water your mother-in-law drinks? Don't disrespect your dog like that. LOL, by that logic, old tap water is the dog's water. No contamination, no issue. Wait until she hears about gasp, restaurants where one pitcher is shared between strangers. Then maybe talk with your daughter about the inappropriate wording of her comment. It could be she didn't understand, but your mother-in-law is more than old enough to realize that the dog's water is very different from water from a pitcher also used to fill the dog bowl. She needs to engage her logical brain, but I'm sure she can gather hello. Well, I will not the idea at all, and on top of this entire story is hilarious. Except I'm sorry if it's legitimately creating an issue with your mother-in-law. I'm laughing out loud at the cute kindness of your stepdaughter thinking it was special dog water. And also, it sounds like exactly the kind of phrase we would use in my family. Plus, the idea of someone thinking you're trying to poison her with dog germs is just chef's kiss. Good luck, OP. Story 4. I've been in a committed long-distance relationship for the last 3 years with my girlfriend, who I truly believed was the love of my life. We met in college, hit it off immediately, and have been inseparable in spirit if not always in physical proximity. She recently got a job in my city, which seemed like the universe finally aligning for us. She's supposed to move here in just 2 months, which should be the start of our new life together. Up until recently, I had absolute trust in her. My trust was so complete, so unshakable, that I never even considered the possibility of infidelity or emotional wandering. But during my last visit to her current city, a trip I had been looking forward to immensely, I noticed something that knocked the wind out of my sails. It started with her phone, which seemed to be constantly buzzing with notifications from a coworker. At first, I didn't think much of it. After all, she's about to leave that job, and tying up loose ends with colleagues is expected. But then I saw the frequency of the messages, and something didn't sit right with me. They were from one of her new coworkers on Microsoft Teams, a chat platform they use at her office. Trying to keep the atmosphere light, I half-jokingly warned her that she seemed to be playing with fire. She laughed it off, assuring me that it was all in good fun, just work banter. But something in my gut told me it wasn't that simple. One afternoon, while she was out on a run, I let my curiosity get the better of me and checked her team's chat. What I found was not what I was expecting. They had known each other for barely a month, yet their chat was filled with daily conversations that stretched well beyond work topics. They exchanged jokes, shared videos, and discussed their personal tastes in music and food. My girlfriend even mentioned trying out a new restaurant, omitting the fact that it was our date night, and I was completely absent from their conversations. I was stunned. This wasn't the girl I thought I knew. We ended up having a massive fight about it, after which we gave each other the cold shoulder for a full day. Even after our argument, he sent her a frivolous gift, and despite knowing how upset I was, she responded in kind. Since then, my trust has been deeply shaken. She's been telling me I'm not supporting her enough with her move. I'm feeling pressured because she's moving here largely because of our relationship, and suddenly, I find myself emotionally withdrawing because of all this. It feels like the moment I wasn't fully available to her emotionally, she started seeking attention elsewhere. She continues to insist that everyone at work knows she has a boyfriend and that she's committed to our relationship. She points out that she wouldn't be uprooting her life if she wasn't serious about us. But if that's the case, why hide our relationship from her chats with this coworker? Why entertain his flirty banter? Now, she says I'm being unreasonable, that he's just a friendly guy, and that she's allowed to have friends at work. But it's hard for me to accept that when their interaction crosses boundaries that we had never discussed renegotiating. Am I being the unreasonable one here? Am I the idiot for feeling betrayed by her emotional intimacy with someone else, even if it hasn't physically crossed the line? I feel like I'm spiraling into a place of distrust and resentment, and I don't know how to pull myself out of it. How do I deal with this? Is it possible to rebuild trust after it's been compromised like this? Or am I just setting myself up for more pain down the road? Your thoughts would really help me out right now. For the top comments, you are the idiot. You're snooping and insecure, so you're fine with her leaving her job, friends, and current life to be with you. But she can't even talk to a friend without you snooping through her phone and monitoring her conversations? You're a controlling monster. Not to mention, assuming you're in the US, snooping on your girlfriend's phone and a work account is an unauthorized access to a company's computer data. So, both she and her employer, past or current, whatever, could charge you with crimes deservedly. Always funny to read a story where someone is so scared of losing their partner to someone else that they absolutely blow up an otherwise fine relationship for it and drive their partner away. Instead, she shares gifts and talks about music with her new coworker. The horror. You are the idiot. You need to calm down a lot if you want to continue having a girlfriend. Story 5. I'm 26 years old, and so is my wife, Lainey. We have a little one who's just 3.5 years old. We've got this amazing circle of support when it comes to babysitting. Great friends, close family, and a rock-solid babysitter we can always count on. But there's this one person in the mix who we've always known as a firm no when it comes to watching our kid. Lainey's younger sister, Megan, who's 21. Right from the moment Megan first met our toddler, she made it crystal clear, don't ever count on me for babysitting. I just don't do kids. And that's cool. Honestly, everyone's got their limits and preferences, right? So, for the past 3.5 years, not once have we asked her to babysit. Now, let's fast forward to about a month ago. Picture this. It's just another regular day until all hell breaks loose at my job. I work in IT, and we had a major security breach. Big trouble, data flying everywhere, the whole 9 yards. They needed every available hand, and they needed us like yesterday. Meanwhile, Lainey's tied up with a 12-hour emergency shift at the hospital and isn't checking her phone. To make things worse, my parents, who are usually our go-to for emergencies, are out of town, and our babysitter is mysteriously MIA. I'm scrambling, running out of options, and that's when I think of Megan. It's desperate, I know, but I thought maybe just this once, given the emergency, she might step in. So, I call her up, lay out the mess I'm in, and even offer to pay her $200 for just a few hours of her time. Megan shuts me down without a second thought. I even go as far as to tell her to name her price. Anything to get to work. But she hits me with a cold, sounds like a you problem, and hangs up. I couldn't make it to work that night and ended up facing some serious heat the next day at the office. When I told Lainey what happened, she was understandably upset, but reminded me that we've always known where Megan stood on the whole babysitting deal. We shouldn't be shocked, she said. Fast forward to last night. Lainey's working yet another late shift, and who calls me out of the blue but Megan? It's midnight, and she's stranded at some fancy outdoor mall after a night out because she lost her credit cards. She's tried everyone she knows, and now she's down to me. She's out of options, no cash to get home, and here I am, her last call. She begs me to come pick her up. Now, remembering our last interaction, where she left me high and dry, I asked her about other ways to get home. Public transport, maybe? No, she says, she's only got $5 on her. So, I suggest the bus. It runs right near her place, but she's getting more upset, pleading with me to just come and get her. I think back to how she treated me and decide to stand my ground. Sounds like a you problem, I tell her, echoing her own words back to her from a month ago. I went back to bed, deciding not to let her issue become mine this time. She somehow managed to get home, but first thing in the morning, she's on the phone to Lainey, crying about how I left her stranded. Now, Lainey's caught in the middle, trying to play peacemaker. She thinks I should apologize to smooth things over. But here's the thing. I feel like Megan needed to learn a lesson about what family means, about supporting each other even when it's inconvenient. Was it petty of me to mirror her own response back to her? Maybe, but it felt like the right thing to do in the moment. A sort of tough love, if you will. Now, Lainey's family is upset with me, Megan's furious, and I'm stuck wondering if I went too far. Should I have just picked her up and let bygones be bygones? Or was I right to hold my ground and push back a bit? I'm torn. On one hand, I believe in family helping family, but on the other, shouldn't there be some sort of mutual respect and reciprocation? What do you all think? Did I handle this the right way, or am I just causing more drama than it's worth? I'd really appreciate any advice or insight you guys might have. Am I the idiot now? For the top comments, not the idiot. It doesn't sound like she was in a dangerous situation, so it wasn't an emergency. She wouldn't help you with a one-time childcare emergency, nor even when you made her a more than fair offer of payment. So, yeah, getting stuck without a ride was her problem, not yours. Megan has tasted karma. It's her lesson to learn. You made sure she was in a safe area and gave her tips on how to get home safe, which is more than what she did for you when you really needed help. Why should you help her when she refuses to help you? That is her problem at that point. Don't be a doormat and don't apologize. Everyone's the idiot here. She made her boundaries clear when it comes to your kid, even in emergencies. You can't count on that. You made your boundaries clear, even in emergencies. She can't count on you to bail her out. Funny how things work both ways. Story 6. Am I the a-hole for not letting my family stay at my apartment because they can't respect my girlfriend's needs? My 22 M. girlfriend of 3 years, 21, F, has severe PTSD. She's been in therapy for years and has really improved over the past few years. The one thing that hasn't improved is that nights are hard for her, and she needs very specific things to be able to fall asleep. She needs every window in the apartment to be closed and locked. Our bedroom door has to be locked. She checks the entire apartment 1 to 2 times before going to sleep to make sure everything is how she needs it. The light has to be on, and she needs a fan and a heated blanket. From there can't be any noises. We don't have anything on the bed or where it can be expected to accidentally make a noise. And we have sound dampening curtains outside our window because if there's any loud noise, she'll wake up, and I'll have to check the apartment, closets, and everything, and convince her that she's safe and can go back to bed. Even with all of this, she still has nights where she wakes up screaming or has nightmares so bad that she vomits. We stayed with my family a few months ago, and it was horrible. I explained all of this to my mom, and she assured me the doors and windows would be locked. They can keep the windows closed at night while she's there. They'll make sure there's no loud noises at night, and they have a fan she could use. It was horrible. None of the doors or windows locked. There was no fan. My sister was not quiet at night, and they complained about the lights so much that we turned it off. We stayed there for 2 nights, and she didn't sleep at all for either of those nights, then had rough days because she wasn't sleeping. On the 3rd day, I ended up spending almost $1,000 on an Airbnb so she could sleep. They said I was being ridiculous and that she was exaggerating because there's no way she stayed up for 2 nights. The rest of the visit was okay since she was able to sleep, but they kept making comments about how ridiculous we were being for getting an Airbnb. Now, they want to visit our city and stay in our apartment, but I said no because when we stayed with them, it was a circus show, and I can't throw her off in her own home. They think we're being dramatic and that if it's that big of a deal, she can stay with her sister while they're here. Our apartment is on her sister's property. Her sister built it specifically so she would be able to move out while still having someone right there when she needs help. But I refused to kick her out so they could stay. Now, they're calling us ungrateful and saying my girlfriend hates them, and I'm taking her side. Am I the a-hole?